Isn't it a shame that even the closest to him could never understand Satoru Gojo? What's up, guys? Hunzo here, and here we are to do a nice little breakdown and discussion on a little something I'd like to call the monster paradox, or the humanity paradox, or whatever I decide to call it. Because with that being the case, we have a lot to discuss about the nature of Yuta's choice, his misunderstanding of Satoru Gojo, and how that understanding is natural due to the nature of Satoru Gojo and the situation at hand, but ultimately why I think all of that in combination is why Yuta is somehow still going to lose, at least on like a narrative and writing level, based on what JJK seemed to be about so far. So, let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into it. Editing me, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me, and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact, Yuta Okkotsu has it in him? No. Gojo's body has it in him, and likely will keep it in him at all times. I don't know what way to say. Essentially, Yuta has taken over Satoru Gojo. And the funny thing about this is that Yuta Okkotsu makes a very interesting claim within this chapter. Something that is fundamental and core to the nature of the character, and why ultimately I think he's destined to fail. As Gojo has fallen, or will fall, and the possibility of Yuta taking over his body is brought up, Yuta says something very, very interesting. What about Gojo-sensei? Wasn't he important? We always let him be the monster. With Gojo-sensei gone, someone has to do it. If no one else has the guts to do it, then I'll be the monster. You see, the funny thing about choosing to be a monster is that you can't be. At least, not innately. At least by how the Jujutsu world seems to function, and how the narrative seems to speak of the monsters that exist within it. Because what Yuta Okkotsu is doing here, sacrificing, and I'm putting this in heavy quotation marks, sacrificing his humanity in order to become a monster is still innately human. I think Yuta fails to realize that, and I think a good chunk of people in the universe seem to fail to realize that. At least the people who were talking with Yuta about the possibility at the time. Because, do me a favor, take one look at that face. Does that look monstrous to you? Does that seem like the evil, big, bad monster weapon dude? No. At least not to me. That just looks like a baby boy who's confused that he's now piloting his sensei's body like a mech. And the look continues all the way to the very end of the chapter. Ultimately, Yuta Okkotsu is bug-eyed and wide-mouthed. And bug-eyed and wide-mouthed until the very end, even as he pulls out the domain expansion of his sensei. And ultimately, that is why I think he's going to lose. Because Yuta Okkotsu didn't become a monster by taking over Satoru Gojo's body. He made the most human choice possible. He made this choice, as he puts it himself, because no one else wanted to. No one else was willing to sacrifice their morals, go away, do all this. And obviously it's half because no one else had the potential to. It was only Yuta Okkotsu who had the potential to. But ultimately, this comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of who Satoru Gojo is. Or at least who Satoru Gojo wants to be viewed as and believed as he wants to connect with people. Because Satoru Gojo, despite being undeniably powerful, a weapon of mass destruction, powerful enough to power a whole country on his own and likely much, much more, thanks to the six eyes and the seemingly boundless cursed energy, all that, Satoru Gojo isn't a monster. He's just a man. And we see that even as some of his first students stay with him in the moment where he decides to take a monster-esque action, he still can't really be seen as anything more than a monster, even as he takes a human decision. Deciding to free everyone from the traps and shackles of the Elders of Jujutsu High is a very human choice. Because that takes willpower. That takes a decision that he doesn't know the outcome of. He says it himself. Come on now. I know we're all sorcerers, but I'd rather not expose students to a scene with excessive gore. Especially since I don't think this is the right way to handle this. But he's still making a human decision. But what does Yuta Okkotsu say and view him as? a monster. That's why he's trying to take that away and let Gojo be human. What does Yuta Okkotsu say everyone else needs to view Satoru Gojo as, and how everyone else sees Satoru Gojo as? A monster. Just not a man, a weapon of mass destruction. And, hey, don't get me wrong, that view makes sense within the context of the narrative. Satoru Gojo is the strongest weapon. Simply put, the Limitless, plus the Six Eyes, plus his prowess, plus Endless Infinity, plus Infinite Reds, Infinite Blues, Infinite Purples, Unlimited Void, all of that is undeniably and unbelievably, insanely powerful. And thusly, I get why he's viewed as that. But this comes to the paradox. Ultimately, Yuta Okkotsu, by viewing Satoru Gojo as a monster who needs to have the burden shared, and everyone else viewing Satoru Gojo as a monster who needs to have the burden shared, instantly sacrifice his humanity to view him as such. And that's one of the biggest issues that Satoru Gojo himself admits that he had. Ultimately, as he says, he couldn't really ever be viewed as human. And he says this: I can empathize with the magnitude of his sheer solitude more than anyone else. I love everyone, and I don't feel lonely now. But somewhere along the way, there was a line I drew. Not as a human, but as a living creature. You can make a flower bloom, you can admire it, but you can't tell a flower, I want you to understand me. The skills I drilled into this tempered body of mine, my refined senses, even my haphazard tactics and explosive power, I gave it my all. I wanted to convey everything to Sukuna. I wanted him to know. The absolute strongest, the loneliness that follows, the one who will teach you about love is... It was fun. In the end, Satoru Gojo is the strongest, but the strongest doesn't automatically make you a monster. Yuta Okkotsu, even through possessing Satoru Gojo, doesn't automatically become a monster. He's still a man, making a choice to help save and protect other men. At the cost of his own bodily autonomy, at the cost of defiling Satoru Gojo's body, at a cost who knows how great, considering they simply do not understand how this could go. Yuta Okkotsu himself admits that he simply doesn't know. Remember, this is long before, at least this flashback is long before he actually had consumed Kenjaku. They took a haphazard guess upon a haphazard guess on how his technique would work, how it would activate, how it would transpire, and the results it could have. But all of that risk, all of that willingness to take that risk, all that willingness to bear that burden upon oneself is innately human. In spite of wielding what would be considered a weapon of mass destruction in the flesh of Satoru Gojo, Yuta Okkotsu is still a human. A human with a breakable idea. Uro told him a long time ago, at least a long time ago for us, and likely a long time ago in narrative, relatively speaking, for Yuta Okkotsu, that he could never rise to that point. Never become an actual monster. Something more akin to a calamity rather than a being. And she was right. Because while this, in one way, is the ultimate act of monsterhood, defiling the body of Satoru Gojo-sensei, becoming him and wielding him as a weapon like he never wanted to be viewed as, yeah, in a way that's monstrous, but in a way, it's the most human choice one could make. Yuta himself, he himself was no longer human. At least in his own mind. But truly, while he had a body that was sliced in half, he decided to make the ultimate human choice to leap to another, to hopefully defeat the King of Curses. That is still human. But ultimately, in a certain sense, Yuta has revealed something about himself. And something that Gojo seems to understand, or maybe started to understand. And something that, at least to me, shows that even real Sukuna understands why Yuta Okkotsu never annoyed him. Why Satoru Gojo never really annoyed him, because they were willing to go pretty far. As Sukuna himself admits, I get it now. Sorry I took you lightly. I didn't think you were capable of doing that, Yuta Okkotsu. He acknowledges that Yuta has taken a step quite far, but ultimately that step has done one thing. it's broken Yuta Okkotsu away from himself, his ideals. Literally, by abandoning his flesh, he's proven why he can't stand on the level of Ryomen Sukuna. He made that sacrifice, that human play, that ultimately isolates him in a body strong enough to fight Sukuna, because there's no other option. But still, the fact that he had to resort to that shows that Yuta Okkotsu's ideals are bendable. They're breakable. He will bend and flow and move and go to whatever situation presents itself, simply because he feels like he has to, for the sake of humanity, for the sake of his friends, for the sake of Satoru Gojo, the man who he thought as no more than a monster that was bearing monsterhood all alone. He thought he could take that upon his shoulders. And that's why Ryomen Sukuna doesn't react to Yuta Okkotsu, or Gota, or whatever you wish to call him, with annoyance. Rather, he reacts to him with excitement, with eagerness, with joy, readiness, a smile on his face as he finally gets to fight something that may have been able to teach him about love. But ultimately, that's why I think Yuta's going to lose. Because his ideas, his ideals, his thoughts, his morals, everything was breakable. Everything was snapped. He was willing to move and bend, abandon his own flesh, the original curse, everything that he was, in order to become something to save humanity. But ultimately, you know who has proven unbreakable? You know who's proven that no matter what, no matter how many times he's beaten down, abandoned, even simply knocked away like he's nothing. You know who actually has managed to get under the King of Curse's skin? Actually managed to bother him to a point where he has to actively reflect on his morals and the impact that person has had on him in a way that not even Satoru Gojo could, not Higuruma Hiromi, not Yuta Okkotsu, none of them. The only person to cause the King of Curses to be genuinely lost in thought is Yuji Itadori. Ultimately, Yuji Itadori is the one who has proven something to Sukuna. Proven that no matter what, no matter how many dismantles he throws at him, no matter how he cleaves apart his flesh, no matter how many black flashes he hits him with, no matter how many regular strikes, everything, no matter what, the one person who's managed to irritate Ryomen Sukuna, the one brat that manages to get up and fight back and prove, ultimately, in a way, he is a human monster that only Sukuna could understand or begin to be beguiled by, is Yuji Itadori. Just like Sukuna, Yuji Itadori has proven something. Something that Yuta Okkotsu, through this motion, while I do think it is ultimately the right play, just like Yuta does. Don't let any of what I say in this video make you believe that I think Yuta taking over Satoru Gojo's body was the bad play. No, absolutely, it makes the most sense. You gotta get a weapon to fight the ultimate weapon. And hey, Satoru Gojo's body at base is a weapon. But simply on the moral and ideological standpoint of JJK and the idea of monsters versus humans and the idea of unbreakable wills versus breakable wills and unbreakable ideas versus breakable ideas, Yuta Okkotsu's shown that his ideals are breakable. The reason Sukuna gives him credit for going that far and moving beyond isn't because Yuta Okkotsu's mystically magically become a monster. It's because he's deciding to play at one. Unlike Sukuna, who is one. And we see that ultimately, the one person, the one young man, who brings Sukuna to cross his arms in the middle of a battle of life and death and look upon him with a mix of disgust, yet a strange sense of respect, is Yuji Itadori. The one person who Sukuna has acknowledged to have an ideal that is unbreakable. He is different. Unfortunately, I've learned that someone far weaker can go toe-to-toe with me and achieve his ideal through strength of will. And that really irritates me. In other words, I was so great in stature that I held no ideals, even despised them. You've given me a clear reason to destroy you here and now, by crushing all your hopes. It is Yuji Itadori who has done that. Yuji Itadori, who has proven his unbreakable will, his unbreakable status, his desire to move forward in his own way. Not through leaping bodies, not through sacrificing who he was, not by trying to take the path of the monster that is Ryomen Sukuna, even in the most human way possible, as Yuta Okkotsu has done. No. Yuji Itadori No matter how many times he is struck down, how many times he's knocked away, how many times he is simply disregarded by seemingly the plot, the narrative, his main villain, everything, Yuji Itadori will rise again. Yuji Itadori will strike Sukuna down. Yuji Itadori will prove his idea and his will and everything he stands for to be unbreakable against the King of Curses. But ultimately, in order to do that, there's an obstacle in the way. That obstacle's name is Yuta Okkotsu. That obstacle's name is Gojo. So unfortunately, in one way, shape, or form, on a writing level, I see a man destined to fall. Even as he made the sacrifice of sacrifices in order to play at a man who he believed to be a monster, Yuta Okkotsu will fall to Ryomusuka. How? That's a question for another day. But I simply wanted to discuss the idea of the paradox that exists within Yuta Okkotsu. A man so strong that he could be viewed as a monster, but is innately human, looking at another man even stronger than him, that was so powerful that he could only view him as a monster standing alone, despite that man deeply desiring more than anything else to be viewed as a human, just like the rest of them. Not just be Satoru Gojo because he was the strongest, but being the strongest because he was Satoru Gojo. So, the man who decided that the weapon was to be wielded is the one who will fall to the man who decides that the weapon must be wielded against him. And I'm excited to see it. I don't know how Gega's going to do it. Who knows? I could be absolutely wrong. Maybe in one way, shape, or form, Yuta Okkotsu will pull out this crazy next-level Buku Bonkers dub. But unfortunately, I don't see it. Because Yuta's proven breakable. Breakable, bendable, and willing to do anything. Meanwhile, there's another man who has yet to shatter, even in the face of the King of Curses. However, that's what I think. Please, what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you guys think I'm absolutely nuts? I have no idea what I'm talking about. That Gojo is about to absolutely break Sukuna's over his back, over his neck, over his knee, whatever you want to call it, because he's the strongest of the strongest of the strongest. And it don't matter if his morals have broken and shattered, and he ultimately could not understand Satoru Gojo is no more than a weapon. Or you guys see what I'm cooking, and see that ultimately Yuta Okkotsu is destined to fail for the fact that he has broken and bent. Please let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave broken idea. Leave broken, not ideal, leave broken idea in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have to have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. Also, now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks will include the live reaction to the very next chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, ad-free variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 patron or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, I do have a link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below. You can drop 5 beans for a short video, 25 beans for a long video, or any support at all. I always appreciate it. But now, I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to thank you to our $3 members, Recliner Plays, Greyhound, Kids Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, King Sukuna, NMA, Real Rare, Paris Arnold, and G Prosper. And I'd like to thank you to our $5 patrons, Steron, Sean, Sammy, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin Encarnacion, Josh Brown, and A+A. And I'd like to thank you to our $7 patrons, Autumn Mornings Lazo, and Fine. And I'd like to thank you to our $10 members, Robbie Uchiha and Jay Warrior. And I'd like to give another thank you to our $10 patrons, Panda Goat, Metal Solid Crisis, Joaquin Munoz, and Joaquin Munoz, along with Idemokami. And I'd like to give a final gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.